think that's probably enough about data. If anybody has questions, you can ask me. I think essentially it just is a useful tool to support all of the other work that's being done.
Hello. Now we can have question answer sessions. If anybody want to ask any questions, then please proceed.
Hi. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Marty. So I wanted to ask, I guess, the three of you about your opinions on the election happening in the United States. I know everyone's probably not from the United States, but I feel like it affects the rest of the world a great deal. Um, I wanted to. Many people in my generation feel that they're not being represented fairly and accurately or correctly, and I'm referring to the superdelegate system. I wanted to know your opinion on that, and also the electoral college. So, if Donald Trump were to win the election, do you believe that the electoral? I mean, if he won the popular vote, do you believe that the electoral college should take action, and is it right for them to take action?
I, first of all, want to say that I'm very honored to be here, and I think I'm incredibly engaged as a citizen in the current election. Engaged is not the right word. I am mesmerized and horrified and glued to of what's going on in my country right now. But I represent a university, a research university, and we don't, I mean, I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I don't have a position in my job as an executive director of a research center. And in fact, the faculty at Harvard and at the Kennedy School specifically, and the faculty that are specifically engaged at the Ash Center, obviously do have opinions, and some of them, there's one man of an esteemed professor, his name is Alex Kazar, and he's written a bunch of books, and he thinks the Electoral College is nuts. Okay, so you're not hallucinating that there might be a problem with the Electoral College. My daughter, who's probably closer to your age, is horrified by the idea of the super delegate. She can't believe that there are people that are not being directly elected by the in the primaries, which is the idea of it, that somehow there's this, class of citizens that get to like have more votes than anyone else. What I said to my daughter, and now, so I'm just speaking as a person here. I don't want to get quoted in any don't want to speak for anything official, but what I said to her, and I do believe it, that there are people that have worked very hard for our system of government. People have, and I've met them, and they really are there, and they're working very hard in our party system, and they're laboring for no money in county government and city government, and we've elected them. We have chosen them to be our representatives. And they have devoted their lives, and not all of them are corrupt. And the word super isn't a very good description of who most of these people are. So, in that sense, shouldn't the people that are in the sense of being career, and I don't mean that in a bad way, aren't those people, don't they deserve to have a vote about who we are going to elect as our president that's in a slightly different category than, say, people who show up at an election and cast one vote? I think that's the way I understand the super delegates. So that's the end
Um, I would just say I actually agree. I don't I, I I understand both sides, but I don't think that they're especially necessary. I think one thing that's missed a lot is why they exist, which is a very ugly election in 72, 76, where, of course, now that I'm on camera, I'm going to blank on all of the relevant information, but you can Google it later. But there was a Democratic uh, representative who it would essentially be like if there were no super delegates and the Bernie Sanders, the slightly more out there candidate, got the nomination and then lost in 49 states. 49 states, the Democrat lost. That yes, McGovern. Thank you. So so if you think like, and if you think about the Democratic Party as a party that wants to stay in power, they had that. They had completely no super delegates, and they had this extremely, or not extremely, but they had a left wing candidate that had a lot of popular support and just got absolutely demolished in a really bad way. And so this super delegates were a reaction to that. It was like, okay, we need people who actually know about government and kind of know what what's going on, to know like, okay, this is an amazing person with amazing ideas, but they're not going to win in the general election, and we need to be there to sort of steer that. I think politically today it's not a great idea because things have shifted enough, that it it's so unpopular, and I just think it's the sort of thing that could go away. It should be evolving. It evolved to have them. It evolved not to. But I think when people know that background, it makes a lot more sense. If you thought about Bernie getting it and then Trump winning in 49 states, that's pretty horrifying. So that's essentially the why they exist.
So I would like to bring up a little bit of a different view as well. I think we also need to change the face of Congress. Um, if you look at who's in Congress, it's a lot of, older Caucasian men, and there's little representation of people our generation, our age. And if you look at what's happening in California, there's actually a female who's running for Congress and she's 23. And that really inspired me because I'm like, if she can do it, there should be more people in our generation to do it too, because they're in a lot of control of what's happening in healthcare, what's happening in our education, and all these different sectors and that are both public and private. And I feel that's something that our generation can be the one to step up and do. We can run and we can voice our opinions and represent the next generation and make changes like starting now.
Anybody?
Thank you. Oh.
So, as a Michigander who is also fascinated and horrified by our current situation, um, I think a lot of it comes down to getting involved in the smaller elections as well, and really paying more attention to who we're letting in the bottom rung of the ladder, because that's how these people climb their way up. But it's also, for me personally, I have considered running locally and getting involved, but it's scary because I am not a rich individual, and so we have a system that is favors people with a lot of money, and so I think that that's a big part of it too. Is where you have people with really good ideas and have the passion, but just do not have the funding to get behind it. And so when you have these systems set up where it's like there's so much favoritism for one ideal, or that 1%, that's, I think, got a lot to do with why we're in the situation that we're in. But I do think that it comes down to, like, when you were speaking about getting people involved in more local elections, and getting really paying attention, because these people don't get there overnight. It's got to start somewhere. And so these smaller elections, I think, are actually way more important than we believe that they are. That's just my opinion.
I was just going to ask a brief question concerning data more specifically, and how, on the one hand, data is very important because it's a good way to hold others accountable for the goals that they set for themselves. But on the other hand, the questions that you ask in the first place and the things that you're measuring, they require evaluation as well. So sometimes you can have a lot of data that seems to support one thing, but if it's skewed based on the fundamental presuppositions of the questions that were asked, and that data is essentially useless. So it's very easy to spin data however you like, and how do you account for that when you're incorporating data? And my second question concerns the overemphasis on quantitative data rather than including qualitative data inside measurements and evaluation, and um, how citizens should sort of shift that so that we're not just evaluating the numbers, but evaluating the quality of the solutions that are brought to in government as well.
I think that's really good points. I think that for me, I absolutely get frustrated by the amount of garbage data. I mean, not only can it be interpreted badly, there's just bad data, just done incorrectly, and it's honestly a lot of the times it's more fun and more exciting, and it's on the media more, or in the media more, and it's sort of like anything else where just more general awareness and education about that, talking about it. I listen to a ton of podcasts about data, like from 538, that they get really into detail about it, and it sort of helps break down the differences between good and bad. Um, one example that is relevant to the election right now is there. You'll see a lot of polls that say uh, there's higher opinion of lice than Donald Trump, or a higher opinion. That was a recent one that just came out. But that's bad data, because that's a phone, like a robo poll, where they just call, and when you phrase the question like that, of course it's just, if you ask a stupid question you'll get a stupid answer, and that's what it is. It's a stupid question, and people are just gonna be like, yeah, sure, lice, and push the button on their phone, and it's not a helpful piece of polling at all. But then Rachel Maddow has it on her show, who I love, because it's funny and it's not helpful. And I honestly don't know what to do about it except talk people's ears off about data, and myself try to do good data. In terms of qualitative, uh, that's something I find really interesting. It's absolutely hard. I mean, you have to, what it boils down to is, if you're going to run a regression analysis, you need numbers. And so you have to quantify it in some way. And you can build algorithms, and you can you can do that in a way you get good information out of that, but you also lose it. The more you start averaging things, the more you start putting numbers on things that aren't supposed to have numbers, the further away you get from reality. And I think it's just the sort of thing that it's important to consider. Again, it's just a tool. So if you have information about the number of people that are homeless or hungry or gender inequality, it, even like wage gap, that it's something that you can have a wage gap of 14% in uh, one way of looking at the numbers, and then if you include part-time work, it's 18%. And those are, it's a significant thing to look at, um, but you need different policies to address full-time employment and part-time employment. And so, yeah, it's just one of many tools in the tool belt, I think. But it's hard, and it's a good question.